Bill, Youth Against War and Fascism, I'm sure he talked about it. They are the people at the Stonewall Rebellion. They were the people out on the streets with the Black Panthers when other revolutionary organizations demeaned them. And in many, many, many ways, FIST, when we created it in 2004, was directly inspired by Youth Against War and Fascism. So I just want to say thank you for the generation before us. But you're 36, so it's not that long ago. It's very confusing. Anyway, as much as we have learned here today from our speakers about different opportunities for struggle, about our own stories and our own experiences, I'm really impressed by all of us for coming out today. Because what is clear today is that no matter how new you may be to any of this, or seasoned in activist bubbles like we were talking about earlier, the history of people's movements shows that all of us know somewhere in our hearts, somewhere in our minds, that this current system is just not working, right? I mean, you don't need to read that many books to know, especially in our generation, that shit's fucked up, right? You know, like, shit's fucked up, right? And I really believe that what connects all of our stories, you know, we've talked about a real breadth of issues and opportunity to struggle, is the contradictions of capitalism. I see a contradiction as two realities rubbing up against each other, creating tension and propelling capitalism to change and develop. Think about it as two crowded people on the subway going, hey, you need to move over, you need to move over. Eventually something happens. Let me see a show of hands. How many of people have heard people describe the current capitalist system, like right now, the recession of, you know, whatever this period people think of as either disaster capitalism, zombie capitalism, or capitalism gone wrong? People have heard that before, those phrases. I'm not from New York, so I don't know. I mean, in the South we talk about that. I think the zombie one is really funny, just because, you know, zombie culture. But I'm here to tell you that the contradictions of capitalism are inherent in the system itself. That this system right now, as messed up as it is working exactly as it's supposed to be. This isn't the disaster version of it. This is just what it's like, right? One of the contradictions of capitalism that we learn about are that capitalist competition inevitably leads to crisis. We've heard of this, the boom-bust cycles of Wall Street. A primary contradiction of capitalist society is between the socialization of production and private appropriation. So given the universal interchange of commodities generated by production for economic value, economic relations thoroughly become socialized. Now, what does that mean? It means that no worker, no community, no country is as self-sufficient any longer. Every commodity, right, everything that we use contains embodied labor, and directly and indirectly by workers throughout the globe. And that goes for the phone technology, it goes for this microphone right here, any number of things. Yet even at the highest stages of socialization, and what I mean by that is workers working together across the globe in different factories, workplaces, connecting their labor power to create the product, socialization as in working together for the similar goal. The organization of production and the appropriation of life's goods, these things that we make, still remains private, separated from social control. So we have these things that much as geniuses all over the world are a part of making, but we still buy it from capitalism. You know, so we have the socialization, as in we know that we're making things. We have the skills. We know that we're selling things. We run the parks. We put the IVs in patients. But the money is going to the capitalists. Black civil rights leaders of the 60s would always remind us we all too often have socialism for the rich and rugged free market capitalism for the poor. The fundamental contradictions of capitalist production lead to other serious contradictions. These contradictions cannot be done away with within the bounds of the system. I think Alex was talking about that you can't like reform. Oh, okay, that's just a mistake. There's a hole and we have to fix it. There's this hole. As the system plays itself out, there are more and more contradictions. They occur independently, outside the will and the control of capitalists themselves. I believe that the plight of our generation under this current period of capitalism is a modern contradiction that points to the failures of the system and leads us to push and evolve and change to destroy capitalism. Aren't we the same generation that remembers where they were when they heard about the September 11th plane crashes? Aren't we the generation that either occupied Zuccotti Square in New York City or helped with occupations similarly in our own cities? We are the people who will remember our emotional feelings of outrage at the murder of Trayvon, at the segregational legislation of SB 1070 in Arizona. We are a generation under siege. When people of color are pushed out of their neighborhoods and into specific areas of our cities, we're stopped and frisked at alarming rates, especially here in New York by the NYPD, but you see this. If it's not the same legislation, it's the same system and the same realities of the state control of the police in many cities across the U.S. Our play is just like that global socialization of production where people across the globe are making products. It's now that the global struggle against austerity and the way that capitalism is playing out, we have a similar experience to the young people in Gaza stopped at checkpoints and in Palestine. We're either locked up in mass incarceration for our generation, the school-to-prison pipeline, or we're locked out of higher education and good jobs. You know, we talk about this in our main programs. Stop the racist war on youth. Youth need good jobs and education. They're not just slogans for us. They're the reality that we live and work in every day. Every time we experience right in front of us the contradictions of capitalism, of the capitalist American dream, the myth of wealth creation by pulling oneself up by your bootstraps, we see the tensions of the ruling class and us, the working class, the vast majority of the world come to life. Martin Luther King Jr., the Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. used to say that it is unfair to tell someone who has no boots to pull himself up by the bootstraps, but it's also unfair to tell someone with boots to pull himself up by the bootstraps if someone else is standing upon his shoelaces. Yeah. You can understand, it's just a metaphor. And I don't have, it's not a direct, I mean, it is a direct quote, I just didn't write it down. How many of us have heard that our generation is the apathetic generation? That we're hipsters who just couldn't care less? How many people in the community tell you, oh, you kids just care about your smartphones and your Facebook, right? How ironic is it that when we dream of student movements in this country in the 60s and 70s, just a handful of years, no more 4 or 5 years before the mass mobilizations of youth in the streets, like the groups like Youth Against War and Fascism, politicians in the United States were decrying those same youth as lazy and apathetic. I'm here to tell you that here at FIST, we're a growing coalition of youth and students committed to replacing jails with schools, ending the war on the undocumented, dismantling the systems that criminalize us, and fighting for self-determination for our communities. We're joined by youth all across the world, like at the World Festival, in the same fight against capitalism that divides people. We each have our own stories, our own unique circumstances that lead us to doing the work we do. We hope that you will join, grow, learn, and organize with us. And I hope that you have taken away some kernel or many kernels of knowledge that will inspire you to fight back. I leave you today with the lyrics of Nas.
Oh, nice.
Whose world is this? The world is yours. Whose world is this? It's mine, it's mine. Whose world is this? It's yours, it's yours. It's mine, it's mine. So it's supposed to be called repeat. People aren't catching on. It's okay. Who's this? It's yours, it's yours. Whose world is this? All right, that's just why, and I'm not going to make people sing today. I'm just really excited and inspired. If something today touched you, if you met somebody who you want to organize with, if you want to go on a trip and see some really awesome people, if you want to, stick it to the man of Bratton or really anybody else or organizing your community, it's crazy revolutionaries and rebels like us. We all are inspired by that same kernel of ambition that so many young people have. Some people are inspired with an ambition for, self-progress, and that's not necessarily bad. But as revolutionaries, we are ambitious. We have an ambitious goal to take state power, to destroy capitalism. And it's going to take all of us, and it'll take a movement. It'll take a energetic, youthful, dancing movement. So thank you so much for coming today.